Something else, right? Woo! We are gifted to be here together in spiritual community at Unity Village Chapel, are we not? So it is the season of Lent. It is the Lent time. And what is the Lent time but a time to engage our practice? Now, you may have, from the world or from other traditions, been invited into various concepts of Lent. Unity has a special take on Lent. We think of Lent as a time of reestablishing ourselves on the divine path, a time of trusting. If we are faltering, it is a time where we activate and engage a practice that will direct us, that we trust in this practice. If we are faltering, we will be directed. It's a time where if we are in error, we will be redirected or rerouted. It's a time of letting go of a false self, a futile self, a fear self. It's time that we engage our spiritual practice consciously, diligently, patiently, and completely for 40 days to make way for the cosmic Christ. This cosmic Christ is the idea of the awakened self known throughout cultures and throughout religions. It is that available, accessible, principle, activity of the highest consciousness. Now, we know that on journeying on our spiritual practice, this is kind of our purpose all the time, right? Every day, right? But this is a time that we take a special moment of awareness for 40 days to practice it in a way that we don't practice it any other time in the year. Because you know the attention span of people, I don't even know what they classify it as right now, but I mean, essentially you guys all just lost attention. We all lost attention like 10 times, right? Since the beginning of my speaking. So how can we expect ourselves for 365 days in the year to keep full, vigilant attention, right? So our spiritual practice is that which we engage, which makes our principles, which makes our spiritual philosophy come alive in a new way. There's a lot of metaphysical symbology here with 40 days. There's a lot of energy just on the planet, right? It's a time that we're coming out of the winter. We're coming out of the winter and we're getting ready to grow. We're getting ready for spring. We're planting seeds and getting ready for growth. Well, the question here, friends, is what do we want to grow from? We're cyclical beings, right? We respond just in harmony with this universe that surrounds us, with the moon, with the planets, with the growing seasons. So if we don't take a time to look from the winter to the spring at what is planted in our garden, then we will unconsciously, subconsciously grow from whatever has been planted there. So this is our time to stop and our time to take a look at our practice. Sunbear, the late medicine man, said, if your spiritual philosophy is not moving you to the state of peace, health, wealth, and love your spirit desires, you need a new spiritual philosophy. So this is our time to check in. Are there any areas alluded to that we don't feel like we're heading in the direction we want to be heading in our life? Is there any place where we want to do some rerouting, some redirection? Is there a place that we should stop and listen? And if our answer to all of those questions is no place of redirection, no place that I might be open to listening, no place I need to shift, well, we may have a rude awakening. There's a story of a man in the scriptures who had one, and we're going to dive into that story today. Now, Paul, who used to be Saul, is someone who probably didn't think he needed to be rerouted, probably didn't think he needed a new direction, probably turned off that sense within him that keeps asking the questions, am I on a track to fulfillment? Am I on a track to betterment? Am I on a track to love? He was probably pretty established in his old habits, in his old routines, in his old conditioning. We all have that aspect in our consciousness, don't we? An aspect of self that it has ingrained habits, ingrained conditioning, ingrained thinking that has a same old routine. And we may not even be consciously aware that from that routine births a path. From that routine births a direction. So Paul had a conversion experience. I'm going to share with you a little about what he was doing. So if you know a lot about Paul, you know he's a fanatic, kind of in whatever he does, right? So even after his conversion, he's still a fanatic. He's still like really gung-ho about everything, right? But Paul was he was Saul at the time, but he was on his way to take care of some business, to take care of some people that were spreading the way, the teachings of the Christ, the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of love, inviting people into a new consciousness, a new paradigm, people that were inviting people to trust the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law, and to break free from the old paradigms and the old patterns. So he was on his way to get them and get them taken care of, and get him to stop spreading that love. Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues at Damascus, so that if he found any who belonged to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Now, he was going along and approaching Damascus. Suddenly, a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" He asked, "Who are you, Lord?" The reply came, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But get up and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do." The men who were traveling with him stood speechless, because they heard the voice but saw no one. Saul got up from the ground, and though his eyes were open, he could see nothing. So they led him hand by hand and brought him into Damascus. For 3 days he was without sight and neither ate nor drank. So that's a story of someone having a rude awakening. That's a story of someone on a path, moving forward in a direction that is not leading to those things Sun Bear talked about, that is not leading to a state of peace, health, wealth, and love that a spirit desires. There is an internal compass when any areas of our lives are leading to separation, to persecution, to injustice, to error. There is an internal compass built within everyone to wake us up and to invite us into a new way of being. For Paul, that was metaphysically a very dramatic process, of waking up to absolute blindness, to waking up to a moment in the darkness where the sight that led you thus far is no longer. Charles Fillmore says that darkness represents our undeveloped capacity caused by a lack of love. Our undeveloped capacity. So Paul was sitting within the midst of being aware of his undeveloped capacity, that he has a whole capacity, a whole life inside of him, a whole world that he has left undeveloped, untouched, that he has not attended to, that he has not planted. Do you find it interesting at all that when he hears the voice, he says, "Who are you, Lord?" Like, what an interesting question, right? To hear, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" Well, who are you? This man of God says, "Who are you? Who are you, Lord?" In unity, you may hear the term for Lord also translated as law. The Lord of my being, the law of my being, the Lord, the law, this divine law. Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, taught and talked relentlessly about this law, and that it is ours to investigate into this law, to activate it, to practice it, to step into it, and to teach it. So in this moment, Saul, that limited space in consciousness, is saying, "Who are you, law? What is this law?" So there must have been a moment of questioning, must have been a moment on that road to persecution where there was a pause enough of a pause, enough of a question, right? Have you ever had that moment where you have enough of a question that you open up just enough of your heart, enough of your mind, enough of your being, enough of your soul to say, all right, show me. Not by might, not by power, but if there is any reason to be made of this, if there is anything that is mine to do, if there is any law to follow, if there is any practice to activate, let me inquire. Who is this, Lord? Who are you? To which the answer came, Jesus. And Jesus said himself, I am the way. This was not just Jesus who walked. This was Jesus, the consciousness of the cosmic Christ that invited everyone to love. That is that spirit that is still speaking all of the time, that anytime we are in separation, anytime we're in anxiety, anytime we are in error, anytime we are in illusion, it stands here and it says, no. All intelligence is present in this moment. All love is present in this moment. You have complete access. You were born with all of the mechanics, all of the spiritual infrastructure, all of the neurological makings to have pure and perfect access to the divine practice and the divine pattern within. So that's what he inquired into. And what did he get? What did he get? Nothing short of saying, well, then you need to stop seeing for 3 symbolic days. Mind, idea, expression. Shift the mind, make space for the idea, have a new expression. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, the consciousness of source, the consciousness of the expression of that source, each one of us, and the activity of that source, the breath of that source, the life of that source. That only through 3 days of complete fasting from any vision that you have known before, from that sight, can there be space made to redirect you on your path? That, I think, is the message that Paul got. He later on in his story had his healing where the scales fell from his eyes, and that came from a divine appointment, kind of like in the Unity way. You know how sometimes when you walk into a sanctuary or you walk into something, you hear exactly what you needed to hear that day, and it's your divine appointment, and no one could take that away from you. You know it couldn't be planned even by the best planners in the world. You know that somehow the universe loves you, supports you, and wants you to win. That somehow, because of what just happened, you recognize that there is something beautiful going on that nourishes me, that knows me. There is something working in my life, right? And no one can take that away. That cannot be diminished. That cannot be stolen, and it cannot be denied. Well, that's what happened to Saul on his transition to his new self, to his awakened self, to Paul. Ananias, who was in the area, got the message from Spirit that said, go heal him. Go heal him. I need you to go there and take the scales off of his eyes. Do you ever get an intuition or a knowing and you're like, what's this about? Because Ananias was like, are you kidding me? Have you heard of this guy? This guy is a rat. He's a flea on a rat. He's an amoeba on a flea on a rat. If you watch Grease, you know. Ananias was like, forget it, hon, but I'm listening, so I will go. And Saul, got the message that someone would be coming to heal him. And in that divine appointment, in that recognition of that healing, of knowing that that source is speaking in and to and through and as me saying this will happen, and then it occurs, a divine appointment moment happened, a crystallization, a consciousness happened that vibrated at such a frequency that a healing happened, an awakening happened, and this could not be taken away. And this set this man on a whole new course of action. And instead of preaching the gospel of evil and separation, he began to invite people into love. He began to celebrate the practice of love and celebrate the practice of the cosmic Christ. Paul is the one who didn't actually meet Jesus, of the apostles, of the disciples. He's the one who didn't meet Jesus, because he met him here, but not on the planet, not in the physical form. He met him in the consciousness and got that consciousness that there is a holy power and presence, that it is the cosmic divine design of all beings, of all beings. Giving up the old habits, the old conditioning, the old routine. What it can lead to. It can lead to an emanation and a creation that comes from our cosmic Christ self. Call it what you want. Our avatar self, our awakened self, our higher self. But it is that consciousness that is calling each one of us in each moment to not only step into our good, but to become the good on the planet. So this road is one that we all are invited to take. I want to share with you a piece from the Course in Miracles. There's an affirmation in the Course in lesson 129 that says, "Beyond this world, there is a world I want. I choose to see that world instead of this, for here is nothing that I really want." There's a world beyond this world. There's a consciousness that I can choose in every moment, that if I direct my sight away from illusion mentality into the absolute, into God consciousness, that I can move to a new way of being. The Course says it is impossible to see two worlds. It is impossible to see two worlds which have no overlap of any kind. Seek for the one, the other disappears, but one remains. They are the range of choice beyond which your decisions cannot go. The real and the unreal are all there to choose between, and nothing more than these. In a nutshell, that means we have a choice, and it's either one thing or the other. We choose in each moment the illusion or the truth. It's that simple. Our minds make it complicated, but it's that simple. We choose love or fear. It goes on to talk about the conditions of peace and this moment that Paul has, that is all of our moments, that is a moment in the transformation of the carnal mind to the Christ consciousness, of the limited or little self, the fear self, the feeble self, to the awakened self. It talks about the holy instant. The holy instant is nothing more than a special case or an extreme example of what every situation is meant to be. So all of a sudden, there is an epiphany of what is really supposed to be, of what is deep, what is true, what is important, what the real spiritual fabric is of this life. It goes on to say what is asked for us, what is asked of us. It says, this simple courtesy is all the Holy Spirit asks of you. Let truth be what it is. Do not intrude upon it. Do not attack it. Do not interrupt its coming. Let it encompass every situation and bring you peace. Not even faith is asked of you, for truth asks nothing. Let it enter, and it will call forth and secure for you the faith you need for peace. But rise you not against it, for against your opposition it cannot come. Would you not want to make a holy instant of every situation? Would you not want to make a holy instant of every situation? That's the question of Lent. Would you not want to make a holy instant, to see with right vision, to be blinded to illusion and awakened to the conversion, awakened to the true consciousness in every instant? That is the invitation. And all we have to do is engage in a practice where we do not attack this truth, do not rise against it, where we too do not interrupt it, and where three, we let it encompass every situation. It is a living invitation. So what would we need to let go of to make way for our expansion, for our truth? What would we need to release and to let go of, to make way for the new you, the full self, the connected self, the awakened self, the conscious and cosmic self? A removal of the senses of sight that lead us to error. An awareness of where we are on the path to resentment. Are there any places in our lives where we are on a path walking in or walking towards resentment? Is there a place where we're walking towards or in persecution, condemnation, judgment? What road are you walking down that you wish you weren't? Is there a road that I am walking down that I wish I wasn't? Or maybe I'm not even aware I'm operating from limited conditions in some area of my life, but I have the ability to stop and ask, is there any expansion to happen in and through me? Is there anywhere that my sight has become scaly? Have I stopped dreaming, hoping, expanding? Have I become stagnant in any area of my life? This Lenten time, L-E-N-T, I made an acronym for that is live and embody a new thought. Live and embody a new thought. This is a special time in our spiritual practice to take on a vigilant, and I say vigilant, I don't use that very often, but I always use it for Lent, because when we're dealing with the mind, it is a crazy place, is it not? We have to be vigilant with our thoughts. So much that we don't write. The other option is this cosmic 2x4. Blind for 3 days. Right? Has anyone had the cosmic 2x4? So our spiritual practice is one of the things that either supports us when we have the cosmic 2x4, or what engages us in a conscious practice so that we kind of invite our own, but we do it as more of like one of those little noodles that you play with in the pool. Right? So it's to shift, to become a co-creator in our spiritual journey and our spiritual practice, to have these awakenings and have them by invitation. So what is it for us? I invite you to take a moment and gently close your eyes if you're comfortable, to know that this day is perfectly designed from the universe to you. To know that we each have a vision for our high selves. And we can consciously surrender into this moment saying, sweet spirit, what shall I stop? What is it that I am thinking, acting from, believing? What paradigm am I planting seeds in that if I were to release it for this Lent season, there would be a new emergence, a new garden planted, a new life awaiting? What is it that I am ready to let go of, that I don't want to grow anymore, I don't want to plant anymore? This is not a diet. This is not letting go of chocolate. What is it that I'm really ready to release? And as we breathe into this moment, allow whatever comes to mind to be there without judgment or criticism. And we allow these words of Yogananda to be our prayer. It might be somewhat like the consciousness of the prayer in Paul when he had his conversion, his transformation. Whatever it is that is bringing darkness, whatever it is that is bringing limitation, the intention of this prayer is together to say, let there be light. So in the words of Yogananda, Cosmic Mother, take this darkness away. When I sit with eyes closed, enveloped in self-created shadows, cause thou blaze upon me in splendor, the aurora of intuition. Mother Divine, draw aside thy glittering veil of cosmic motion pictures and show me thy delusion dispersing face of mercy. O blazing light, awaken my heart Awaken my soul. Ignite my darkness. Tear the veil of silence and fill my temple with thy glory. Heavenly Father, destroy in us the wrong throughout the ages, the wrong thought of ages, the wrong thought that we are frail human beings. Destroy that thought. Manifest thyself as the light behind our reason, the deep blaze of wisdom. And we bring that fasting thought to this time and space. I invite you to open your eyes again. If there is something that came to you, I invite you to develop an affirmation, a denial and an affirmation I am fasting from, and then put it in as short of a little catchy phrase as you can. I am fasting from whatever you just got, whatever you just heard, whatever you just sensed. I am fasting from that. And I am knowing that, and then put God consciousness in the place. I am fasting from fear, knowing that I am fully provided for. I am fasting from depression, knowing that Spirit is my source. Whatever it is, remove that. And for 40 days, take on a practice that anytime the mind begins to wander into the valley, into the shadows, into the darkness, to redirect it consciously, clearly, powerfully, as if it is a little child that's running in the street and you go, oh no, over here. This is how we do it. This is how we do it, right? For 40 days. There's one thing that you can be sure of is after having this practice of 40 days, there will be a transformation. If we enter into the darkness, which is just symbolic of that void, that space, if we enter into that space where we clear out, where we clear and clean out, the universe will fill that space. The universe abhors a vacuum. The universe will fill that space with love, with wealth, with abundance, with God ideas, with visions, with light, with power. But the idea is truly not to move from this idea that Lent is a diet. It's not a diet, right? It's not a diet. It's a spiritual practice of fasting from something that no longer serves us. So will we be clear and change our agreements? Will we be clear and change our agreements with our thinking? That's step one. Change the agreement with the old thinking. Only power comes to those agreements when we activate them. When we say, oh yes, limited thinking, this is your home. Here it is. That's the sanctuary. This is the place, the abode of depression, the abode of limitation, the abode of fear, of persecution. Who would want to say that consciously, right? So simply turn it around. I am fasting from that. This is the abode of love. This is the abode of consciousness. This is the abode of prayer. This is the abode of silence. Fasting. The second step is get comfortable with the void. Get comfortable with the space. Get comfortable with seeming spiritual blindness for a moment, because it is a good sign to not know. It's a good sign to not know what to fill it with. It's a good sign not to know what's next. And it's a good sign to be a little healthy, uncomfortable, and to encourage ourselves to get comfortable. Because our spiritual practice is not a fast food drive-in, right? So let us get comfortable, because the more comfort we can have in the space, in the silence, even in the darkness, the more space there is for listening. The third step is to believe. Believe that we have a higher self. Believe that you have one. Believe that I have one. Believe that all beings have a higher self, a divine self that guides us, that has information, that is in fact intelligence. A divine self that knows you've got this. A divine self that is a constant oasis for truth. So our practice is mindful fasting, patient waiting, and taking moments to drop into this high self. Taking moments to pause from the commotion of the world around us and even the commotion of the world within us. To take heart breaths, as if inhaling and exhaling through the heart itself, breaths of remembrance. In the words of Mother Teresa, we need to find God, and God cannot be found in noise and restlessness. God is the friend of silence. See how nature, trees, flowers, grass grows in the silence. See the stars, the moon, and the sun, how they move in silence. We need silence to be able to touch our souls. Namaste.